So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
You talk to some people are afraid to have sex. They're scared, you know. Ooh, the first time I had sex, I was scared. Who was I scared? I was all alone.
Yeah, it's not an easy life, is it?
Are you kidding, Johnny? It's tough to be funny when you're coming off drugs, I'll tell you that. I tried marijuana just once. Just once. I didn't know what I was doing. I was on cocaine, you know. Oh, you're on cocaine? You don't know what you're doing, you kid. And I was in a restaurant. I tried to snort the sugar off my cornflakes. I don't know what I was doing. Now, drugs are bad. They're bad for your health. You know that. Very bad. Now, that's important to your health.
How is your health?
Are you kidding? I'm not a kid. I'm getting old. Are you kidding? I'm at the age now, if I pass a surgical supply store, I go in and browse. The trouble with me is I don't listen to my doctor. That's my trouble. You know my doctor, Dr. Vinny Boombatz. That's
right.
My doctor. How is he? Listen to him. He's fine. He's on vacation over in Sicily, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I don't listen to him. And he told me to get plenty of liquids and a lot of rest. I drank till I passed out, you know. I was drinking last night, Johnny. Ooh, I got loaded last night. I drank so much last night, Johnny, a mosquito bit me that it flew into a wall, you know. Show business, that can keep you drinking too, boy. Show business, what a racket. You kidding? They don't know what you go through in show business, boy. Show business. You know, Johnny, you know, sometimes I think back of all the women I had to sleep with to get where I got, you know. Tough business, you kidding? Well, look at you, Johnny. All the years you've been in show business, right? Ended up with a desk job. I mean, you know...
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, August the 13th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Maria Bartiromo, and then we'll find out whether or not Stu is back.
Markets making new highs again, Maria. New highs beget new highs. This is a breakout market. Earnings are strong. We've got stimulus in the form of lots of spending, and now we have certainty thanks to a certain someone in the White House.
Ashley Davis. I'm a 25-year resident of Washington, D.C. I'm thrilled what is happening right now and just watching what the city council is going to do to try to stop the mayor again.
Jerry. And watching Schiff, an all-important story. Will Washington have the gumption to go after him?
Great point. All right, thanks very much. Great show today, panel. Love having you all. Catch my latest Fox Nation special, The Enemy Above. Most people don't realize why space is so important. It's because it's where our satellites are. It is streaming right now on Fox Nation. Join us for that. Varney and Company picks it up. Ashley Webster in for Stu. We'll see you tomorrow. Ashley, take it away.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning to you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Webster in for Stu Varney today. Let's get right to it. President Trump is touting record-high tariff revenues with nearly $28 billion collected in July alone. That's a 273% increase compared to a year ago. But despite that surge, the U.S. deficit still grew to $291 billion in July. Good news, bad news situation. On Wall Street, the S&P and NASDAQ both closed at new record highs this morning. Guess what? Futures still in the green. The Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ all up 0.25% to 0.33%. Let's take a look at the bonds. The 10-year Treasury just ever so slightly lower at 4.2%. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the 2-year that was also heading just slightly lower. Indeed, it's at 3.70%. And we always have to keep track of Bitcoin that has been on an upward surge recently. It continues. It's up $624 at 120,250. All right, coming up on the show, National Guard troops seen in Washington, D.C. as President Trump begins his crackdown on crime. On the first day alone, federal and local authorities made 23 arrests, including suspects wanted for murder and gun-related crimes. Meantime, ICE being flooded with over 100,000 applications from what officials are calling patriotic Americans. Tom Homan himself will be joining us live. And in New York City, Zohran Mamdani hitting Staten Island today for day 3 of his 5-borough anti-Trump tour. He's leading in the latest polls, and Curtis Sliwa is going to be here to weigh in. Don't miss that. It is Wednesday, August the 13th, 2025. Varney and Company about to begin.
And that was the Stuart Varney substitute. So I'm wondering, am I going to get a discount on my cable bill because of this? I doubt it. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you now, Dr. Berg.
90% of all chronic disease stems from this one lie, which is taught all over the world in universities to medical doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, personal trainers. Ready for this?
Glucose is the body's preferred energy source. That's right, folks. Sugar, it does the body good. And cut, that was it.
If glucose was so essential and so good, why does your body do everything in its capacity to remove the glucose from your blood as fast as possible? From an evolutionary standpoint, we would never have survived if we depended on glucose.
Is that true, Mr. Caveman, sir?
An average thin person has about 100,000 calories of fat on their body. When you consume a lot of sugar, our body takes it out of the blood real fast, and it's not going to burn it all up. What happens to all this excess sugar when your body removes it from the blood? Does it just evaporate? Do you pee it out? No. It gets converted to fat. It is true that some of our body does require glucose, but it's a very small percentage, and that can be made by our own body very easily. Why does your body do everything in its capacity to remove the glucose from your blood as fast as possible? Here we are told that we need to consume 50 to 60% of all of our calories being carbohydrates, which turns into glucose. When you get your blood sugar tested and it comes out to be 80, which is normal, guess how much sugar that is in your blood? It's only a teaspoon. But think about how much sugar a person actually consumes on a daily basis. You're talking about a massive amount of sugar. What is all that doing in your blood? Well, your body is working like crazy to remove it. Think about the pancreas, what it has to do. It has to just literally pump out this sugar. Truth is that sugar was never supposed to be the primary fuel. It's an emergency fuel. If our bodies were designed to live on sugar, then why do we only store 1,700 calories of sugar? That's about the number of calories you consume in one day. The single biggest root cause of 90% of chronic disease is high glucose. It's the blood sugar spikes. It acts like shredded glass on the inside of the arteries, creating all sorts of inflammation. Anything over 4 grams of sugar, that's 1 teaspoon of sugar, that's like 1/5 of a piece of bread, starts to create a problem in the arteries where your body has to start removing the excess. But just think about the average person. How much sugar they put into their bloodstream. Insulin has to be jacked up and produced to remove it. What happens internally is you have this high level of insulin. It just keeps removing this sugar over and over and over to the point where the body has to then compensate by producing something called insulin resistance. It slows down the sugar that goes inside the cells to prevent the cells from having glucose toxicity. Insulin resistance is your body saying to you, I've had enough. Stop giving me sugar. Here are some common symptoms. Frequent urination at night, brain fog, loss of memory, belly fat, visual problems, mood issues, anxiety, depression, the inability to go from one meal to the next without the needing of a snack, excessive hunger, cravings for carbs, heart palpitations, fluid issues in your ankles or your feet, sleep apnea. Those are just some of the initial symptoms. If we give it 15 years, then you get diabetes. Give it 25 years, we create this caramelization of your brain that's called dementia. It's type 3 diabetes. Chronic spiking of blood sugar causes cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration. Out of all the things that damages the small little arteries to your eyes, your kidney, the nervous system, and especially the inside of the arteries, it's glucose. Why aren't people worried about consuming glucose? Because of this one simple lie that we're told everywhere, that glucose is the preferred energy source. But we don't do that, right? But of course, in the food pyramid, you'll see 65% of the calories should be carbohydrate. Did you realize if you start reducing your glucose and go on a low-carb diet and keep your carbohydrates below 30 grams a day? In one study, there was 90% success of coming off insulin in 10 weeks on being on a low-carb diet. Out of all the things you can do for improving your health, low-carb diet is at the top of the list. This lie of glucose being the preferred fuel was created by the food industry. They invaded certain industry. They have bought off scientists. They have shifted the blame on the saturated fat being the problem. And all because you can make the most profit on refined carbohydrates. Through subsidies, you can buy 1 metric ton of corn for $195. How many boxes of cornflakes can you make with 1 metric ton of corn? If you haven't tried the ketogenic diet, try it. It'll greatly help you, because once you start, you're going to quickly find out that it's not glucose, it's ketones that your body will love the most, especially for your brain. To learn more about that, watch this video right.
And that was Dr. Berg from his YouTube account. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the first paragraph of an article by Andrew Stiles, and it's in the Free Beacon. The Democrat Party is hideously unpopular heading into next year's midterms. This is a problem for the small faction of Democrats who think the party should prioritize winning elections over throwing performative tantrums and other theater kid nonsense. It's less of a problem for the Democrats who are actually leading the party right now and setting the agenda for 2026. They are loud, obnoxious, profane, and passionate in their defense of illegal immigrants and other criminals. Rules? They don't believe in rules. And now the last two paragraphs. Washington's liberal residents protested in opposition to Trump's assertion that crime was bad. Meanwhile, a man was shot and killed blocks away, which marked the city's 100th homicide of the year. Even MSNBC host Joe Scarborough, who in 2024 demonstrated a willingness to say anything to help Democrats win elections, wasn't buying the outrage. He criticized his fellow Trump haters for blasting the president in public while complaining privately that Trump was right about the out-of-control crime problem in D.C. That didn't go over well with NBC contributor Anand Girhardis, who echoed the insane anti-crime position most Democrats have adopted since 2020. Quote, "When I go to D.C., I'm not afraid of losing my wallet," unquote, he said. Quote, "I'm afraid that my children's freedom to breathe will be stolen in a world where climate change policy is non-existent," unquote. So he misses, as most people do, the whole issue here with Washington, D.C., and that is the issue of government rights. And climate change is one of those excuses that government rights people use to justify government rights. So there is the rights of the individual, and then there is the authority and responsibility of government. The individual has rights, meaning that the people get to do whatever they want so long as what they want to do is not prohibited by law. Whereas the government can only do that which is permitted by law. Now, the people that like quote-unquote big government have decided arbitrarily that that's not good. They don't have enough power to do all the things that they want to do. That What they want to do is be able to pick and choose which laws they are going to enforce and which laws they're not going to enforce, effectively giving the government rights that it actually doesn't have. Now, the problem here is that nobody seems to recognize this, and that means that we all end up playing whack-a-mole. President Trump is going to go out and deal with Washington, D.C., but then he's going to have to go out and deal with L.A. and Chicago and New York and Seattle and Portland. It's a game of whack-a-mole. Whereas if he recognizes what's really going on, what's underneath all of this stuff, which is this fictional government rights movement, then he can put all of this to rest in one fell swoop. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit more of Varney and Company about Washington, D.C.
Joins us this morning. Great to have you here, Katie. I think it's clear this is a losing issue for the Democrats. Despite what the mayor of D.C. says, I think the silent majority says, yeah, it's about time.
Well, it's a shame that the issue of fighting crime has become such a political issue because it affects everyday people, and there are serious consequences for not enforcing the laws on the books and for allowing criminals to run around.
There we go. So that's the part I wanted you to hear right there, where she says there's serious consequences for not enforcing the laws on the books. That is government rights in action. That's what the left, the Democrats, want. Okay? They want to be able to have the government be able to decide which laws it's going to enforce and which laws it won't. It has no such authority, has no such right. It must, if the laws say that it has to enforce certain things, certain laws say that something is illegal or prohibited, the government must take action. There's no such thing as, well, we don't feel like it today, or stand down. That's one of their favorite phrases. It doesn't exist. The government doesn't have that option. It must do its job. It is the people that have rights. It is the people that can do whatever they want, so long as what they want to do isn't a violation of law. So, but again, there she is saying, well, talking about not enforcing laws, though that's an option. It's not. Don't be fooled. Not enforcing the law is not an option. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now motivation.
You can replace money. You cannot get a year back.
All you need to get where you're going, you already got it. Right? You already have it. All I need you to do is believe in yourself. Well, you say, E.T., my teacher don't believe in me. My own parents don't believe in me, right? You don't listen to me. You don't need nobody else to make your dreams become reality. I don't need them to believe in me. I don't need them to encourage me. I don't need them to pump me up, to motivate me. I'm my own motivation. All you need is a dream. All you need is a goal. Because once you get your goal, you activate it. You come to life. You come to life. You come alive. You are, once you have a goal, you got something to wake up to. You got something to go to bed for, all right? What you are to be, you're now becoming.
I earned the right to be here. I grinded to be here. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning the last 13 years, giving out content every day. I deserve to be here. Don't talk to me like that. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? See, because I grind so hard, I work so hard, that when I get this opportunity, I don't play with it. I don't act like I deserve to be here. I think about my ancestors and what they went through, and that's why I'm here. So the first thing I need y'all to do is, and I know you sweet, what I'm trying to tell you, this is different, baby. This ain't high school. This ain't college. This ain't for fun. This somebody's lifestyle. And people going out there getting it. And if something happens to you, I promise you, if something happened to you, as sweet as you are, you're going to be what? Come on, you got to talk back to me. You're going to be what? Replace. Say it again. You're going to be what? That ought to scare you. That ought to scare you. That alone ought to make you wake up every day and say, I cannot afford to be replaced.
And you're running out of time. You don't know how much time you have. You keep telling yourself you got time and watch what happens now. On your mark, get set, go. You are running out of time. All right? I'm going to say it again. You are running out of time. 2 weeks. My man told his grandfather, I'm graduating in 2 weeks later. Even before he literally marched, his grandfather passed. Who's going to pass in your life as you average? Who's not going to see you blow up? Who's not going to see you accomplish your goals? Who's not going to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor with you? Who put in why? Because you average. And one day you're going to be great, but you think you got time. You think you got time. AET 3 years from now, 5 years from now. I'm telling you, you deserve to be great now. And not only do you deserve to be great, there's some people in your life. Listen to me, you're running out of time. That's right, you got a job and you new at it. Yup, you new at your job and you like, E.T., look, I just got here. I got forever. Listen to me very closely. You gotta hear me. You might be at that job another 10 years. You might be there another 20 years. But that opportunity, somebody's about to leave and get another job. Hear me very closely. Somebody's about to quit. Somebody's about to get fired. And you will not, listen to me, you will not be ready at that particular moment to go to the next level. We're not talking about the job right now. We're talking about an opportunity. You never know when your opportunity is that opportunity. It may not be 2 years from now. It may not be 3 years from now. It may not be 4 years from now. Your opportunity might come in the next 6 weeks. Your opportunity to get your mama out of that neighborhood and get your mama into a new neighborhood, listen to me, that opportunity might come in the next 6 months. The question is, will you be ready when that opportunity comes? So you're running out of time. 1 minute you're doing it, the next minute you're not. 1 month you're doing it, the next minute you're not. We're not talking about consistency right now. We talked about consistency before. We're not talking about consistency right now. I'm talking about residence. You got to surrender to that thing. You can't be playing with it. You can't, should I quit? Should I give up? Or should I keep going? Listen to me. I can't tell you what you should do. But I'm going to ask you this question. What's in your seed? This is not for the head. This is for the heart. What's the seed to you? What is it worth to you? What is it worth? What is it worth to you? Well, I don't know what your seed is. I don't know what your harvest is going to be when it's fully developed. I don't know if you should abort right now or not. I don't know if you should quit or you should give up. But I'm going to ask you this. What's the value of your seed? I know my seed. I couldn't give up. Homeless, I still couldn't give up. 12 years to give it, I couldn't give up. I'm one class shy, the staff of the PhD. I can't give up. Why? Because the value, what it's worth, what I put in too much. I've given too much. I've sweat too much. I've given up sleep. I've given up friendship. I've given up so much stuff that I had to get back later. Why? Because the value, I put too much in it. What's it worth to you? What does it cost? What price have you paid for it? What has it cost you? And if it costs you something, then you better not quit until you get a harvest.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. A little bit of meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of John Cobelt.
They think in Washington, D.C., it's a small number of criminals that cause 60 to 70% of the crimes. I remember seeing FBI statistics maybe 20 years ago had the same proportion. They said that like 6% of the criminals commit 70% of the offenses. There is a select group of hardcore violent psychotics. If you just get rid of those people, the crime will fall by 70%. And that's exactly the group that city councils here in LA and in California and Washington, D.C., Chicago, New York, they won't do that. They won't do that. They don't think the government has the right to put anybody behind bars. They don't think there's any crime that can be committed by a juvenile that should result in long prison terms. So all these gangsters running the streets, these goons, these thugs, these people who basically grew up without parents, they all band together on the street. Some of them are like 12 years old. And they go running around and they just randomly attack people. Like that government employee, that kid who worked for Doge, got all beaten, bloodied up. They do this for sport at night.
And so that was John Cobelt about the Washington, D.C. situation. A couple of things. First of all, what he's talking about is what's called Pareto's Law, or the 80-20 rule, where 80% of crimes are committed by 20%, roughly, of criminals. But his statistics bear that out, 6 and 70%. 6% of the criminals create 70% of the crime. And he's right. If you can get those 6% behind bars, then the crime rate drops dramatically. Then the next part of this is he talks about 12-year-olds that are out committing these crimes. That's liberal parents are putting these 12-year-olds on the street. These are the people whose kids have been raised as sovereign children. They've been told they can do whatever the hell they want, eat what they want, when they want, how they want, decide whether or not they're going to go to school or do their homework, or they're going to watch TV, or they're going to stay up until midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. They get to do whatever they want to do, and with predictably disastrous consequences. They're out on the streets being delinquents. And then the third part of this is he's close. He talks about rights, that the government thinks that it has no right to do. It's exactly the opposite. These people in government believe that government has the right to decide what laws it's going to enforce and what laws it isn't, and it doesn't. It doesn't. You go into office, the laws are already there. It is your job to enforce them. If a budget is due, you have to produce that budget, and you have to produce it at a certain time and in a certain way. It's all in the law. And the same thing goes with law enforcement activities. If there's a law that says that, for instance, they have 12-year-olds, and there's a lot of people complaining that we can't prosecute them. Well, as a matter of fact, you can. But what you're going to be doing then is using the curfew laws. 12-year-olds are not allowed to be out at, say, 10 o'clock at night. And if they are, then you pick them up and put them in jail and have their parents come and pick them up. And maybe after a while, their liberal parents are going to get tired of having to go to the jail every night to pick their kids up. The other thing is that the powers that be, let's say district attorney, if these kids are on the street on a regular basis, then you get child protective services. If necessary, you put them in juvenile hall as incorrigible. Okay, me and everybody I knew when I was growing up, we got the talk. And the talk was, our parents sat us down and said, look, especially when we're just about to become teenagers. You think you're going to go out and run roughshod over this household, do whatever you want, forget it. Okay, if you don't listen to us, then we will simply turn you over to the sheriff's department and put you in juvenile hall until you're 21 years old. And we all were telling our parents, what? We didn't do anything. Yes, you did. It's called incorrigibility. If you're not going to obey your parents, you're not going to do what it is that your parents are telling you to do, you may end up in juvenile hall. And I know I had a coworker that told me about her experience. Her mother got sick of it. One night she came home late and she was stoned, and mom said, I'm done with this. Called the sheriff's department, and she got to spend the rest of her teenage years and her early 20s in juvenile hall. Okay, in jail. So if that's what you have to do, that's what you got to do. But the point is that the government has to do that. There's certain things, whatever the law tells is on the books, they've got to do it. There's no option. There's no, I don't feel like it today. Nuh-uh. You do it, or these government people should not only face being thrown out of office, they should face criminal and civil prosecution. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Ayn Rand, the Ayn Rand quote of the day. Quote, the term laissez-faire capitalism, which one has to use today in order to be understood, is actually a redundancy. Only an economy of total laissez-faire is capitalism. Anything else is a mixed economy. That is, a mixture in varying degrees of freedom and controls, of voluntary choice and government compulsion, of individualism and collectivism. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter, The Intellectual Bankruptcy of Our Age, from the book, The Voice of Reason. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth.
As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In One Thing is True mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute.
Thank you. Now a little bit of Judge Janine.
So President Trump has vowed to make D.C. safe and beautiful again. And as part of his effort to fight crime, he's bringing in our federal law enforcement partners like FBI, ATF, DEA, or Park Police, everybody to help the Metropolitan PD fight crime. And the president's message to the criminals was, if you spit, we hit. Well, we didn't quite do that the other night when an individual went up to one of the federal law enforcement officers and started jumping up and down, screaming at him, berating him, yelling at him. And then he took a Subway sandwich about this big and took it and threw it at the officer. He thought it was funny. Well, he doesn't think it's funny today because we charge him with a felony, assault on a police officer. And we're going to back the police to the hilt. So there. Stick your Subway sandwich somewhere else.
And that was Judge Janine. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Europe won.
Je le dis au RN, à la gauche, pour l'instant, qui est opposé à la destitution d'Emmanuel Macron? Les Français n'en peuvent plus. Emmanuel Macron doit partir. Pas dans 2 ans, mais maintenant. C'est comme ça, les Français ne veulent plus, n'en veulent plus. Donc, que faire? Emmanuel Macron ne veut pas partir. Le seul moyen, c'est que tous les partis politiques disent maintenant, ça suffit.
Merci.
On ne peut pas attendre 2 ans.
Merci
voilà.
beaucoup Thierry pour votre témoignage. Justine est assez d'accord avec vous. Bonjour Justine.
Bonjour.
Vous nous appelez d'où Justine?
Des Ardennes.
Alors on vous écoute.
Effectivement, moi je rejoins un petit peu l'opinion de votre auditeur précédent. Sauf que moi je rajouterais que pour moi, si la guerre civile, on y arrive dans le sens où il y a une époque, effectivement, où je rejoins la personne qui intervenait auparavant à l'antenne, où les Français fuyaient, où il y avait comme un exode, on va dire, républicain, parce que les gens voulaient se protéger eux-mêmes, que ce soit au niveau de l'école ou au niveau, voilà, de la vie, enfin, du cadre social dans lequel ils évoluaient. Sauf que là, j'ai l'impression qu'on a quand même un regain, et j'en fais partie, un regain républicain où les gens, voilà, effectivement, n'en peuvent plus et il y a un sursaut qui va se mettre en place. Je ne souhaite pas la guerre civile, attention, parce que ça va impliquer énormément de choses négatives. Mais là, on y est.
Je le dis.
And that was Europe 1. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Apollo.
2. The function of the men in the Mocher was to run the mission. The difference between their role and that of the astronauts lay in MSC's distinction between command and control as originally formulated by Walt Williams. The astronauts controlled the spacecraft, the Moker commanded the mission. The ground had to be in charge. The volume of information required to make many of the crucial decisions was so great that only a fraction of it could even be displayed on the spacecraft's panels, let alone be absorbed and acted upon by the three-man crew. Only one astronaut ever tried to question the ground's primacy. The astronaut was one of the original Mercury 7, Wally Schirra. His crewmates were Walt Cunningham and Don Isley, and the mission was Apollo 7. For whatever reasons, possibly aggravated by a miserable cold that lasted for most of the flight, Schirra got into a running battle with the Moker over a number of matters, topped off by one occasion when he referred to a flight director's instructions as idiotic. Not only did Schirra never fly again, neither did Cunningham or Isley. But while the flight controllers in the Moker were in charge of the flight, they saw almost nothing of it. Few contrasts are as stark as that between the way an Apollo launch looked to the outside world and the way it looked to a controller. The hummers in the back row of the Moker, who didn't have anything to do anyway, watched the televised image of the launch on their consoles, and it was sometimes piped onto one of the flight director's screens as well. But not onto a controller's screen. The controller's whole world during a launch consisted of the white numbers on a black screen, the plots on the boards, and the low voices in his headset. At the moment of liftoff, there was for him no slowly rising Saturn V, no roar of engines, no Walter Cronkite. For the controller, there was just an uninflected voice counting down and saying, "Liftoff." And then some of the numbers on his display began to change. A problem seldom announced itself. For a few of the most important potential failures, the controller had a specific warning light that would flash on his console. But hundreds of things might go wrong for which no light would flash, and the controllers didn't have the luxury of a computer smart enough to state clearly that a diode was overheating or a circuit had failed. Usually the only sign given to the controller was that a number was not what it was supposed to be. Discerning that the number was wrong was made difficult by the fact that the screen was filled with numbers. It was made more difficult still by the fact that many of these numbers were constantly changing. It was up to the controller to notice that one number among the dozens wasn't right. Even when the controller had pinpointed an errant number, it seldom told an unambiguous story. We're talking about 1960s computers, incomprehensibly slow by 21st century standards. Mission Control's state-of-the-art mainframe was often overloaded and slow to get the data up on the screens, and the signals from the tracking stations were sometimes erratic. One set of numbers on the controller screen could be 15 seconds old, while all the other numbers were fresh, creating the illusion of a problem. Therefore, in the midst of everything else he was worrying about, the controller had to remember to check his data source slots at the top right-hand corner of the screen to see whether any of them had an asterisk under them, which would indicate that the numbers associated with that source were no longer updating. And then he should glance at the clocks on his screen. If a broader problem were affecting all of his data, then the clocks would have stopped counting. If the controller was reasonably sure he had an anomalous number on his hands, its meaning had to be deciphered in the context of several other numbers that were changing, or failing to change. It was also possible that other numbers that might explain the conundrum would not be showing on the current screen, and he would have to call up one of the other displays that were available to his console. Perhaps they would not even be on displays that normally belonged on his console, so the controller must have prepared for that portion of the flight by specifying other displays, normally on other screens, that he could call up, or by knowing which other controller to ask whether one of the numbers on that controller screen was changing or failing to change in a particular pattern. The controller was also plugged into a set of communications loops. One loop was the flight director's and another was the air-to-ground loop. A third was always one of those rooms on the outer perimeter of the square corridor, the controller's own back room, where specialists were watching the data affecting their particular controller's job in much more detail than the controller in the front room could watch for himself. The number and choice of other loops that the controller would plug into depended on a variety of factors, all of which changed as the phases of the flight changed. A controller might easily have a half dozen or more loops buzzing in his ear at one time. He would have turned the volume up about 3 decibels on his primary loops so that words spoken on them stood out, but voices from all the rest of the loops would be constantly talking as well in bursts of a few words at a time, usually in the form of abbreviations. Seldom did a controller hear a full sentence, for sentences take time, and to speak unnecessarily was a breach of loop discipline. The function of the flight control team was to provide essential information to people who had to have it and to react to situations that required a reaction, not to chat about how things were going. Even though no one said more than a few words at a time, the combined volume of information constantly being fed into the controller's headset was formidable. Because the messages were so brief, the entire content of one could be buried under the sound of another. And because much of the information was not specifically intended for him, he could not expect another controller to make sure he had heard. He had to be able to pick up from the many voices on the loops that one murmured bit of information that was pertinent to what he was seeing. Naturally, the volume of information and the confusion of voices became greatest when something unusual was happening, which was at just that moment when the controller had the most urgent need to concentrate. Once the controller thought he had identified a problem, he should not go to the flight director with it too quickly, for flight's attention was a precious and limited resource. Even if the controller did have a problem that flight needed to know about, he had to be aware of the other problems that were already on the flight director's plate to understand, without asking, if his problem could wait longer than some of the other problems, and to remain quiet until the appropriate moment came. The flight controller also had to be aware that, if, during a time-critical phase such as launch or lunar descent, he spoke too quickly and was wrong, he could set off a chain of reactions that could ultimately lead to the needless abort of a mission. Nor, of course, could he afford to be too slow in reporting a problem to flight, for there were times when the gap between the onset of a disastrous problem and the time when it was too late to do anything about it was measured in seconds. For the flight controller, that was about all there was to it. All he had to do was recognize a problem hidden in his displays, assess it correctly in the context of a mass of additional information, be neither too precipitous nor too hesitant in reporting it to the flight director, and be prepared to do all this instantly for hours on end.
And that was Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. You've heard people say, well, it ain't rocket science. Well, this is rocket science. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that abortion is power for men.